You have to be passionate about this business. 90% of restaurants fail in the first 3 years.
New York is #1. This is a culture of hustlers. I'm surrounded by some of the greatest chefs, by some of the greatest restaurateurs.
You just meet some of the most incredible people from all sorts of walks of life.
Gabe is a competitor. It seemed like he opened up a new spot every year.
Joseph Leonard, Jeffrey's Grocery, Fedora, Perla, Bar Sardine, and Momar.
I don't know that it was always going to be this big thing from the beginning.
It literally was a group of people who sat down at a table every night and was just like, how can we blow people's minds tonight?
It was just like going to your palace apartment.
Feels like a family.
My foray or entry into the restaurant world started in high school with a little job at a Philly cheesesteak shop, but I really dug firmly deep into the roots of the restaurant industry while going to the University of Wisconsin. I started by working in the back of the house of a deli, making sandwiches, was a line cook. I saw waiters making more money and working less hours, so I went to the owner and said, I would like to work less hours and make more money. Can I be a waiter? As a waiter in a college town, you see bartenders. We're working the same amount of hours, making more money. I decided that I needed to become a bartender.
He bartended at a great bar cafe called Cafe Momar. It was a wine bar, but that was his first real bartending gig, and it was an amazing space.
When Gabe got the job at Momar, he was given terrible nights, to be honest. And Gabe came up with an idea to have a friend who DJs, play records, promote it, don't have a cover charge, which on a college campus is a big thing. The guy was presiding over a party that was completely of his own generation. It was clear that he was connecting people and thinking about the scene in a different way from that moment.
There's a story that when Gabe was a bartender, he used to keep like sticky notes behind the bar. And when he got each person's name, he would write it down in big letters and stick it on his side of the bar in front of their face so that he would remember their name. And then he would notoriously have a little notebook that he kept. We would run to the bathroom and write down all the pertinent information he just learned about this person. So he then was able to make connections, keep connections, get regulars. People came in because he had this energy behind the bar. And that was what he loved to do.
Growing up, Gabe was always really outgoing. He had a lot of friends. He was the president in our high school, I think, for a year or two, something like that. And people kind of always flocked to him.
I ended up bartending my way through college. During that time span is when I found a lot of connections and love for the industry. I moved to New York and I wanted to land myself a bartending position at a great bar or a great New York restaurant. I was swiftly rejected in that pursuit. And everywhere I went said, oh, come back when you have New York experience. Meanwhile, I'd be looking at these clowns behind the bar who had the job because they had New York experience, and I knew I could bartend circles around these people. I went to a nightclub, and the owner of the nightclub said to me, I don't have any bartending positions now, but I will in 3 months. I've got a bartender here who's leaving. You can be coat check, and then this bartender will leave, and then you can have his job. The only problem with doing coat check is it's literally like humiliating profession. It's so embarrassing when your friends come into the nightclub and give you their coat. I'm like, here's your ticket. We went to college together. I worked at the cool bar in college and you couldn't die to get into the bar. Now you work at Goldman and I'm putting your coat on a hanger and giving you a number. I was like, so bad. And what ended up happening was, come January, that bartender left. And I was like, all right, this is my nod. I'm gonna start bartending in New York. And this fucking owner didn't give me the job, and he hired some hot girl instead. And I was furious. And so, like, in a fit, I quit. I was like, screw this. I ain't doing this shit. And I left, and somebody gave me a job as a bartender.
I don't know if I saw as young as when we were kids that he would be working in restaurants, but I think in college I started to get that feeling that this was kind of something he really was passionate about and really wanted to do.
I guess up until that moment, I always thought I wanted to open a bar. And then working at Hearth is what changed my opinion to, I don't want to open a bar where food is secondary. I want to open up a restaurant where food is a primary focus. I was bartending 3 nights a week at Hearth. I was bartending 3 nights a week in Tribeca at Pace. And I was working during the day at Food and Wine magazine. I met a guy named Joey, and he was the chef and I was a bartender at Pace. And then what ended up happening was I scaled back on my schedule at Hearth and started working more at Pace. And then eventually Pace went out of business. 25-year-old version of myself and an unknown chef decided to open up a 30-seat unknown restaurant, and it's called The Little Owl. At that time, Morimoto opened, Budokan opened, Del Posto opened. Like, these were the kind of restaurants that opened with, you know, names like Steven Starr and Mario Batali and Joe Bastianich, like really big people behind these big projects.
At the time when you were reading about the 200-seat restaurant and how many tens of millions did you spend on your build out, to walk into a place that had 30 seats where you could see literally the features on every face that was in the room, and what they were showing was a smile, and you could see what was happening in the kitchen, and the food tasted larger than the space did. It felt like hanging out at a friend's apartment and eating amazing food. It was epic.
Reading it on paper in the New York Times let me see that things were definitely happening in the right direction for Gabe. He was definitely going to take things in some really interesting new directions.
When he first opened his first restaurant, I think he was kind of bitten by this bug of hospitality and like, I love what I do and I love this thrill. And I think from there, he just wanted to keep growing.
People really took to it, and it put both of our names out there, and that led to another restaurant. And then we decided that it'd be better if we weren't business partners anymore. If I was 27, and now all of a sudden I had all the free time because I sold my restaurants, and I had money because I sold my restaurants. And so I took a year and I decided to, do a lot of self-reflection about everything that I loved about the restaurants that I created and every way that I thought I wanted them to be different. I started to put together what I thought was my ideal version of a perfect neighborhood restaurant. My mother's father is Joseph, and my father's father is Leonard. And so I took my 2 grandfathers' names and put them together for the name of our first restaurant.
The North Star that sort of drove us was this idea of creating the restaurant that we wanted to have in our neighborhood if we lived there, a place that we would want to go to have fun, to feel sort of like a Cheers sort of environment where you go in and the bartenders knew you, you knew the bartenders. Gabe found a space on the way to, I think, a birthday party that had a for rent sign in it in the middle of the West Village, and that ended up becoming Joseph Leonard.
Joseph Leonard is the anchor. It is the place I think about when I think of Gabe's restaurants.
Whereas the Little Owl felt like hosting an amazing dinner every night, Joseph Leonard felt like hosting a party every night.
We're getting all of this traction and getting all of this, the perfect momentum to be this neighborhood establishment, and then it got our legs clipped out from under us.
I wake up one morning to sirens at around 7 a.m. and crashing glass. And I popped open my French windows to the apartment above. I stick my head out, and it's just crawling with fire trucks, and they're breaking the windows to the restaurant.
When I went outside, a buddy of mine in the building said, "Hey, I think your friend's restaurant is on fire."
Yeah, that was a shock. That was wild. It was crazy to see a place that we had spent so many hours in with a hole in the floor and, the windows busted in.
I saw Gabe, out front, just, taking it in, talking to somebody.
And I was just watching furniture just literally get thrown out the window, and I'm just watching stuff just get hosed.
The fire also happened to be about 10 days after we'd opened our second restaurant. So while we had these challenges on one hand of opening and building and working with Jeffrey's Grocery, we're also trying to rebuild its, big brother right across the street.
Dozens of restaurants were offering to support. Every neighbor was bringing cards and cupcakes, and everybody that worked with us was saying, "I'm here, let's put it back together." And when you're surrounded by that much love from your community, I realized we had achieved the penultimate goal, which was we established ourselves to be a fabric of the community. That was a feeling of we've got to come back. I knew that the most important thing that had to happen for reopening Joseph Leonard was keeping the team together. All of the neighbors who love us, they didn't love just me, they loved all of the bartenders and all of the waiters and all of the cooks. I went to two of our investors and I asked them if they could front me money. And they fronted me $75,000. I emptied my entire bank account too, which was, you know, more than that. And I sat down with the whole team and I told everybody, I said, look, I'm gonna pay you 75% of what you used to earn every week for you to sit at home if you'll just wait for me. And I might call you and I might need you to sweep, I might need you to wash some windows, and then we're gonna reopen and I want you to be around.
The meaningfulness behind still paying the employees while we were closed, even when they didn't have a lot of money in the first place to pay the employees, and it got pretty thin up to the end. Gabriel was very transparent about that, and I think rightfully so. He just wanted to retain the fabric of the foundation.
It solidified a group of people that really already did feel like a family, to be even more connected.
I'm so happy and so proud that when we reopened, we didn't lose a single person.
You just see the staff that were so happy to be back there, and Gabe was just so proud to, you know, have that behind him.
At that moment when guests started coming in and all those familiar faces and all the people that we'd served welcomed us back into their lives again, was sort of that moment that it's like, we're here. This is gonna be here for a while.
Around the corner is a restaurant called Fedora, and it's been called Fedora since 1952.
Fedora is a special place in that it constantly is referred to as a New York institution. There's a lot of history that goes behind it.
It was the first time since 1917 to 2010 where this restaurant was getting ready to be passed to somebody not in the family. I walked into the place and it's few places got the kind of soul that Fedora's got. Like, you feel the soul in the floor. You feel it in the brick. You feel it in the ceiling. Like, shit's been happening here since 1917 and great things. And it had been called Fedora since 1952. We felt like we should absolutely keep the name. It fits in all of the ethos. Fedora led to where we're sitting, Perla. And I had the same feeling that I had when I walked into Fedora. I mean, there's bones here. Where in Manhattan do you have these quaint streets like Minetta Lane? We wanted to do Italian, and Perla's my grandmother's name. Perla was married to Joseph.
Oh, I love Perla. She was a big part of my life. Raised me. And we always called her Perla. She never wanted to be called Grandma because she thought it sounded really old. So she's like, call me Perla.
Perla for me was my big opportunity. Before Perla, I had been the general manager of Joseph Leonard, and I'd been the general manager of Jeffrey's Grocery. When we opened Perla, I was the general manager of Perla, and I was also a partner. And it also gave Gabriel and I a chance to really sit down and talk out all of the things that we had been doing at the other restaurants and really refine them and bring them into a new generation of, here is the philosophy, here's how we want to communicate it. And it coincided with, you know, with our biggest opening, with the restaurant that garnered the most attention. It was a beautiful thing. But the concept of Perla has always been eat pasta and listen to hip hop.
Restaurant number 5 is where we broke the trend of naming restaurants after family members. We started with a really inauthentic, like Hunter S. Thompson, Gonzo style of an izakaya. You know, it's like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas style of Japanese food. It enjoyed wild success for a year, but ultimately, I think the biggest challenge with Chez Sardine was it was extremely niche. I think the key is to make restaurants that have more of a timeless element. And that's been the pivot that we did. And so we evolved Chez Sardine into Bar Sardine.
Bar Sardine keeps growing, anchored by one of the best burgers in the city. It's become a great gastropub.
The Montmartre, like the Parisian neighborhood, is our French bistro.
We were on the right track with that place. And that garden was really a defining thing for that restaurant. It was like, wow, this is an opportunity to bring our hospitality to a gorgeous outdoor space.
My first bartending job in Madison, Wisconsin was at a bar called Cafe Montmartre. So it's an homage to my first bartending job and a place that made me want to do this for a living.
A lot of the success and the growth of this company has been because we've found a bunch of great people to work with and built opportunity to work with them in new capacities.
People called us Little Wisco for so long, and it really started when it was just Joseph Leonard, and there was literally 13 people who knew each other from Madison all working together. And if you look at that group now, you know, a significant portion of them, or at least the portion that are still part of the company, are all playing leadership roles.
We've been really good always since we've opened about promoting from within. You know, we have sous chefs that are now executive chefs, servers that are now general managers, bartenders that are now managing partners.
I never thought I'd get into management, basically. I thought I was just hanging out for a little bit, like having a good time, making some money in the summer, making some friends, and being in New York City. And like, that was an exciting thing.
Kind of getting to know Gabe and understand that he comes from behind the bar. You know, like he's been in our position, so he's so easy to talk to and understands where we're coming from, easy to contact. So my first impression was just how kind of humble and like any of us this guy was, and he was the owner.
It was hard for me to leave a career to come here. It was a big risk. You know, I took myself and put myself in design school, and I literally worked from the bottom. Gabe gave me my first design job. One of the regulars at the restaurant, you know, I think Gabe had mentioned I was doing his office, hired me to do his apartment. And it was just kind of like, if I hadn't gotten those 2 jobs and then kind of done another one for a friend, I wouldn't have a portfolio that wouldn't have gotten me the job I have now, which is I'm working for an incredible designer who, you know, works for a magazine and running his company while he does that full time. And so I'm grateful for, you know.
The one piece of advice that I think is probably the least adhered to advice to people who have dreams of opening a restaurant is go work 10, 12, 15 years in the industry before you get any ideas about opening a restaurant for yourself.
You have to be passionate about this business, about this life. It's not easy. You know, I hardly ever see my girlfriend. I am still compelled to do it.
Make decisions. Right or wrong, make decisions. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is fine if you don't lose everything in it.
Stay involved in the community. Go check out other places, be inspired, travel, bring those ideas home and make your community greater.
Follow your dreams, drink a lot of coffee, be willing to work really, really, really hard for what it is that you want. You'll get there. Hopefully the future for Happy Cooking Hospitality is to continue to make people happy and show them a good time for many years to come.
It's about looking at the people that have made us successful, whether it's staff or regulars, first-time diners, and making regulars out of them. It's continuing to push ourselves to find ways to make the restaurants, in our eyes, better.
If there's a thing I'm most proud of, it's that there is a community around the restaurants. What I see for the future is just continuing to expand that feeling for people. I think that would be an amazing thing.
I hope that Happy Cooking Hospitality provides the opportunity for all of us to come up with an idea, a dream, and say, I want to do this. And as long as we have the opportunity to help people be creative, get their ideas out there, and chase a dream, and if we can facilitate that, that's what we want.
Just one word? Yeah. Joseph Leonard. Fuck.
Joseph Leonard, handsome.
Drunk.
Jeffrey's Grocery. Oysters.
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 Clams.
Bar Sardine, Rosé.
Bar Sardine, unique.
Momar, slick.
Perla.
Sexy.
Fat.
Speakeasy.
Home.
Long fucking hours.